And it's one of those things where it almost feels taboo to talk about it because there's so much power and authority that comes from a scientist in a lab coat who talks about everything that's happening with climate change. And so when you have like a bunch of people for decades talking about the same exact context of this narrative, it's really difficult to introduce a new idea. But we're going to get into the fact that this isn't a new idea, that weather is intentionally modified. I'm not even going to get into what happened in the Vietnam War with the monsoons and the weeks and weeks and weeks of rain and downpour that happened over there in Vietnam. But because that's actually one of the most, I guess, known elephants in the room when it comes to government sponsored weather modification. But we're going to get into other things. We're going to get into very current examples, and then we're going to get into some congressional hearings, just kind of different places where it is actually very obvious. We don't have to even look at the writing on the wall. It's been admitted. There's documented proof in terms of the companies that exist with branding and marketing, by the way. But what has happened and why it's still feeling like a taboo to talk about weather modification and the realities of how it's detrimental and intentional by design to cause systematic disruption to locations in a form of soft warfare, where it's not the outward bullet to the head killing of a population, but more so a soft war. But what I mean by that is the intentional secondhand forces of destruction that are not so obvious. And that's why it's hard to talk about, because warfare, what are you talking about, Josh? Let's hear it straight from the sources, the people who are talking on podcasts now about I can seed clouds, foreign governments openly talking about it. Okay, so just to close that door, because I opened it, about the fact that this has been out in the open, is that when it's talked about nowadays, we're dealing with decades and decades of modern propaganda surrounding this issue. So when it's clearly talked about openly and it's not hidden, what tends to happen is we default to a safe space, a safe place in our understanding. And it's easier to not resist the mainstream narrative, even though the mainstream narrative is already flipped. It's not even there. It's more popular to still believe that climate change is the sole and man-made cause climate change that's dealing with everything that's happening, whether it be major thunderstorms, flooding, earthquakes, things of that nature. But at least in terms of rain and snow, we're going to get into some of the obviousness surrounding that. I think by the end of this, you should at least have a technical understanding to some degree about what's happening in diverse places. We're going to look to scripture about how the Bible talks about weather modification. And we're going to break down those scriptures, just kind of letting you know, like, hey, this is what the Bible is referring to. And, we're not just reading into it. Okay, so that's what we like to do. Every time we do a podcast, we like to bring biblical scripture. We like to talk about Jesus because in reality, everything goes back to, well, how do you fight? This is fight like heaven. And fight like heaven is all about doing things and operating in a place of relationship with God, and not just parroting other people and not just going with the flow of mainstream society. So whether an opinion is popular or not is not contingent about what we talk about. Of course, there's current events, things that happen, but our opinions are based on the Word of God. And people nowadays, we got into such a place of moral relativity. So even talking about weather modification is somehow difficult. But I think the veil's lifting. So Um, especially since the Epstein files were released, it seems like everyone's like, yes, conspiracy theorists are no longer conspiracy theorists. They were just telling the truth. They were the truth tellers. So we got to get rid of that language. And I think the scars of the conspiracy theorist shame is what is causing people to still silo, compartmentalize their opinions on things. It's not even opinions, but articulating facts. Why do we talk about different subjects? What's the point of talking about weather modification, about poison in your foods, all those things? Well, there's a practical application to that. There's a practical, this is what I can do. Besides contacting your local congressman. Obviously, telling people about a variety of issues, one, brings you to a place of prayer and intercession. God, protect my body, protect my health, protect the people around me. And then two, there are really practical things you can do to help boost your immunities, to help protect yourself, to help stay away from different things. Now, weather is an interesting subject because obviously we can't avoid going outside. So this is not to put you in a place of fear. There's no prepper tools and strategies really coming out of this podcast. It is more of an exposure. But, as much as we can, we do like to still encourage you. So you're not just fixated on the big bad wolf that is the federal government and different companies. Because this is the topic of today. It's a corporatization of weather modification. Okay, so what does that mean? If something is corporate, that means it has a public record. There are financials and a board of directors and a structure with a CEO, CFO, all of those components of a business. Now, this is not something that would exist 40, 50 years ago. A weather modification company, or so I thought. Okay, so we're going to get into the fact that there's a history of weather modification companies, and it's not just the ones that have been popping up and we're seeing on the Sean Ryan show. We're going to get into that and watch a clip of that, but let's go ahead and just dive right in. Okay, so there's this company here, one of the industry leaders. It's called Weather Modification International, so WMI. We want to get into the fact that, one, this website looks like it was built in 2007. I'm sure it was. I'm sure it was built in 2007. I'm sure they've been around for 20, 30 years. But take a look at this. Let's zoom in here. It says, now more than ever, the worldwide need for solutions to atmospheric necessities such as water resource management and environmental quality monitoring is critical. With nearly half a century of successful programs, half a century, so that puts you in the 1970s, right? 70s? Goodness, because time flies. Sometimes I still think the year 2000 is today, and I base everything off of 50 years ago is 1950, right? No. So the mid-70s, right? With nearly half a century of successful programs, our experience speaks for itself. What experience do you have? Okay, so they're saying capturing the sky's knowledge. So our atmosphere supports virtually all life on the planet, and gases is precipitation. Weather Modification, Inc. provides the tools to accurately and effectively observe, measure, and monitor atmospheric properties that govern how safely and efficient these life-sustaining functions occur. We can apply these tools throughout the troposphere. Assessment, huh? That's all it's about. They're not going to tell you straight up, especially some of these legacy organizations, ones that have been around for 50 years. But did you ever know about the public-facing information, this North Dakota-based company called Weather Modification Incorporated? Weather Modification Incorporated, what do you think they do? Okay, they're talking about monitoring. But check this out. Look how soft this language is. They're very soft on this language. Check it out. It says precipitation development and measurement. Oh, they don't even have much to say about that. Cloud formation and character. So The transformation of invisible atmospheric water vapor to visible water droplets and ice crystals is governed by nucleation. So of course there's a chemical reality in which clouds are formed, precipitation occurs. We've been sending probes into the atmosphere to measure, the states of matter, the states of precipitation, and figuring out these atmospheric pressure changes, and so that those motivating factors, and everything like that, the inputs and the outputs. And so, after decades, you're able to mimic anything with enough tools and enough know-how, and so cloud seeding is nothing new. It's interesting they're not saying that. It says that, outright, but it says this. It says the transformation of visible atmospheric water vapor to visible water droplets and ice crystals is governed by nucleation. The character of the local aerosols governs how quickly nucleation occurs, whether it is the formation of cloud by cloud condensation nuclei, or CCN, or the development of ice within a water cloud. These aerosols provide the various nuclei that govern cloud and precipitation development. Oh, they're just casually mentioning aerosols. Oh, not a big deal. Because this is how we nucleate clouds, and why would we not want to enhance precipitation? It's for the crops, it's for the farms, it's for, the good nature of sustaining a population in society. Let's continue to dam up the water streams. Let's continue to deplete our water sources. Let's continue to not irrigate land properly and diversify the soil, and strip the forests of all the trees, and do all of the man-made modifications without replacing, without sustaining, without doing any sort of remediation. Now, I know there are tree planting organizations that do good work, but by and large, the amount of intentional destruction to our natural environment is definitely a systematic byproduct. You could say corporate greed, but some of it is just done just to do it. And so, meaning we have the ability and the know-how to help maintain an ecosystem when land is stripped and there's development on that land. But by and large, for the most part, things just become concrete slabs. And so when you don't take care of the earth, the weather can go into a place of change and adjustment. And so over time, we've handled development of land improperly. And so, this weather intervention, if it was purely just about cloud seeding, and it didn't have its repercussions and benefits, we really wouldn't also have to deal with the chemtrails in the skies, because that's where people really have a real rub. It's like you're talking about aerosols to help precipitate clouds, but these levels of aluminum and barium and all of these elemental tables, the table of elements content that is saturating our atmosphere day in and day out for decades internationally, even under this current administration, which low-key had vowed here and there to eliminate government-sponsored programs that were indirectly harming or directly harming people. And so you have all this coded language here on this website, and it's to play it safe. It's to not get you into a place of criticism, but to just normalize. And so you have these organizations, like, I really want to just touch on a couple more. Let's just get into it, and then we're going to kind of give some more commentary. North American Weather Consultants, NAWC, climate and weather experts. We make it rain, literally. Okay, they have more of an edgy marketing to their website, but it says here, for over 70 years, NAWC has provided highly specialized consultation, field operations, and climatological research. We help manage and study all things weather. Okay, so they're having you focus on the word study, because study sounds intellectual, educational, and I get it. You are studying and monitoring and tracking. All these metrics are part of recognizing, hey, did we cause a successful storm? Notice here there is literally the eye of a hurricane. So are they modifying it in a good way or modifying it in a negative way? Because you can modify either way. You can modify weather in one direction, which is you're causing rain, you're causing destruction, or you can modify weather in the other direction, which is you're mitigating potential weather situations. But we're going to see that San Antonio, July 2026, just 60 miles northwest of San Antonio, one of the biggest and most sudden flash floods in U.S. history in the last, they said, over 100 years, because the Guadalupe River has had increased river levels, water levels in history. But like this type of sudden flood, man, talk about a fishy situation. We're gonna get into that, how the absolute destruction that weather modification has caused. But yeah, take a look here. So they're getting into this cloud seeding. So they're saying it outright, right? Conscious rainfall and snowfall augmentation program. So hey guys, conscious snow. Why would you need to cause snow? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, what is the, oh guys, if we don't make it snow right now, people are gonna die, crops are gonna fail. Like, they're listing that not for the 8 billion people on the earth, but for the 150, 200 people in the world, or in the United States in this context. They're an American-based company, but they operate globally. They're based in Sandy, Utah, it says. There's no logistical reason. They say they can do it. They're flexing. We can do these things. They're not even the only one. It's a, dare I say, saturated market. But what's the point of it? Like, you have to get into a mode of critique and criticism where you're questioning in a smart way. You're questioning in a smart way. Because it's smart to question the intention of an organized institution, whether it be government or corporation. But when it's in corporate form and it's not just some dude in his backyard who's shooting something into the atmosphere, it can feel like, well, I mean, they are the experts. This is their company. You know, again, it goes back to that brainwashing that just because something's done systematically and with a suit and tie and a CEO or a government agency does not mean that it is automatically there for good. It's just hiding in plain sight. Okay, so I'm going to get into a couple more because it's just, why not, right? Let's like see another example. This is a very interesting, I think they're some European country, and it's loading slow because in reality they are in a different server, and it says /en. So clearly they're operating in a different, out of a different country, but it's called 3DSA. I believe it's Germany. Another organization, it says is based in Greece, and it says they're a global leader that specializes in hail suppression and precipitation programs throughout Europe and the Middle East. Well, there you go. We just went over 2 U.S.-based companies, 1 European country. So territorially, these weather modification companies handle weather, and this is the first one that is speaking specifically on a suppression aspect. The other 2 were talking about monitoring and seeding, so meaning enhancing, making bigger, more intense these storm systems. And that's what they do, right? If you're seeding something, that means you're enhancing it. You're intending it to be bigger. Crazy. So yeah, here's the website. Pretty interesting. So we have 3DSA, kind of a wonky name. It says 3D SA is a Greek private company founded in 1970. Okay, guys, the 70s, right? What? Let's check. Let's check. Vietnam, and I just it again. It's the most common sort of, again, elephant in the room when it comes to like measured weather patterns, extreme weather patterns in like a very intentional way. Because of course floods have happened. Of course, natural disasters happen. It's really not about like saying that everything in history has just been the result of some third party manipulation. Of course not. But especially in recorded times, and when there are a bunch of humans involved and they're trying to accomplish a goal, and it's called correlative reasoning. There's a reasoning, there's deductive reasoning that comes with seeing cause and effect based on A and B. A is the cause, B is the effect, and you make conclusive evidence based on inferences, available information, which they kept a lot of this under wraps for a long time. I haven't even checked to see when did they declassify some of the weather modification tech associated with the Vietnam War. But what I was going to look at is the years of the Vietnam War. Vietnam War lasted from November 1955 to April 1975. The U.S. military involvement was from 1965 to 1973. Okay, so 1973, the end of Vietnam War. What are you seeing here? It's kind of interesting. All these organizations were birthed in the mid 1970s, post Vietnam War. And it's not to say weather modification didn't exist prior to the 1970s. Absolutely not. We're actually going to show an example where apparently in San Diego in the early 1900s there was a cloud seeding effort to help with the rain and the dry land that was arid weather that was taking place over there. And so whether it's true or not, the fact is that the desire to modify the weather is not a new desire. It's not a new thing on the block. People used to pray to rain. Used to pray to other gods provide the rain. In the Bible there is a scripture in the book of Deuteronomy where it talks about the pouring out of rain, that God would pour out rain, that it would be a result of the cries of the heart of the people, and that it would bring the revelation of the Lord, because so you have a necessity, and I know that's the defense that people have when it comes to weather modification. Well, why deny in the first place, right? It's been denied for so long, before Congress, before international conspiracy theory. You have all these clips where people are just poking fun at those who believe it, believe that it's taking place. Now, check this out. This is drone-based. This is new era cloud seeding. Weather balloons, airplanes. This is a hip, new, sort of like trendy, next gen sort of marketing scheme. They're cutting edge here. Make rain, make snow, make droughts end. Rainmaker is ending water scarcity with next generation cloud seeding. Drone, radar. So this is small scale seeding. Now you're talking about, you just want to make it rain over your house? What do you want? And look at a bunch of Gen Zers with backpacks, chilling. Let's look at use cases, because this is the major thing. Is like, if you're really going to promote this and you're going to go from sort of a quiet, yeah, this exists, to more of a public facing, because public knowledge is increasing, so I gotta have to pivot, and you have to educate the next generation on why it's so good. Then you're gonna you're gonna have to be catchy. You're gonna have to demonstrate and prove yourself, because now people are inquiring. Now people are poking and asking questions. Now people are taking water samples and seeing how much a chemical imbalance, neurological effects are happening because of weather modification. But ends justifies the means. Let's not improve our water irrigation system. Let's not improve, again, soil biodiversity. Let's not. It's like there's a problem and it's caused and enhanced by intentional human error and negligence, and then here's the solution, right? And that's why we have what we have, because usage in itself is not wrong. We're supposed to steward this land. We're supposed to utilize its resources. God gave us planet Earth to utilize its resources, but it's how it's done. He called Adam and Eve to be stewards in the book of Genesis, that they would be fruitful and multiply. Meaning, if you're setting your hands to the plow and you're working with your hands, yeah, eat and kill animals because that's our source of food, but animals reproduce. So are you going to intentionally kill the children of those animals and cut off your own food supply, cut off your own hand, proverbially speaking? No, that's not wise. And so wisdom exists in every generation. You have to be intentionally dumb, meaning you choose to not use the God-given wisdom that he's literally given you, because he's creating you in his image, whether you acknowledge the Lord or not. You acknowledge Yahweh, Yeshua. If you don't acknowledge him, he still exists. He's still giving you a measure of his grace. He's giving you a measure of knowledge. And so when you're accountable to that, is like you're in these positions. You are making the decisions. You are the lawmakers. You are the geologists. You are the meteorologists. And instead of collaborating on how to better improve processes, so much compartmentalization, so much money, deep pockets are systematically causing a hindrance in all these different areas where efficiency is not key. It's profit. So, not to get on a rant, because I do like corporations, I do like democracy, I do like, but there is abuse. There is definitely a capitalistic abuse, but it doesn't matter if it's capitalistic or socialist or communist. If your intention is wrong, it's going to be bad. And I believe as a system, communism does not work, socialism does not work. I believe capitalism and democracy and the system that the U.S. does have is the way. But let's see if we can, in the words of one of our founding fathers, oh my gosh, y'all know Benjamin Franklin. Oh my gosh, in the words of Benjamin Franklin, this democracy is yours if you can keep it. Kind of paraphrasing Benjamin Franklin, but the democracy is yours if you can keep it. Meaning he's speaking to the next generations to say, hey, steward it if you can keep it. If you can keep it. So we've had a lack of stewarding. This is the last website. We're going to move on into like other areas, but snowpack enhancement, aquifer recharge, refill reservoirs, wildfire prevention, agriculture, which is great, obviously, agricultural water supply, hydropower stabilization, ecosystem restoration. Okay, so they work with federal government, NGOs, state and local water agencies, corporate partners. Okay, so they're really hitting home the way they work, right? We're not going to get into like who's funding these organizations, right? But take a look at this. Yeah, because who's funding them? It's going to be people from government entities and members of government, people with deep pockets that are funding these organizations, they have their own motivations. It all goes back to eugenics and population control. We can get in that to another episode, but when you see the intentional seeding of our air, and it comes at a cost, chemtrails, people don't believe that's weather modification, but those things are causing disruptions within our atmosphere. And when you see that done over time, you start to say, well, we can either normalize this, or we could start to ask questions and defund these programs. What is the importance of spraying aluminum in our skies for the last 50 years? Like, oh my gosh. But this right here, it says make sunsets. Focus on solar radiation management, cooling the earth rather than traditional rainfall enhancement. Like, hey, you want to go over there? Try this over here. We cool earth with reflective clouds. Okay. We have launched 223 balloons and delivered 222,983 cooling credits. Whatever that means, right? Okay. Cooling credits delivered per month. Okay, so very low on information, very high on marketing and vibes, for sure. But, you know, this goes on and on. So you have full-scale aviation radar services, forensic meteorology and snowpacks, drone-based seeding, hail suppression, manufacturing seed flares. So they're seeding flares, manufacturing seeding flares. So there's different ways to seed the atmosphere, but in some shape or form, something has to get into the atmosphere. Whatever that delivery system is, there's different ways to do that. Now, what's really disturbing, I'm going to pull up this video here. This is a video on the Sean Ryan Show. It was released in June 2025. Okay, so this was literally, I believe, just a few weeks prior to what took place in the Guadalupe River. Yeah, that happened July 2025. So this was 3 weeks before the tremendous downpour that took place in Texas. Let's take a look at this video. Sean Ryan Show, 6 minutes, but I just want to give you full context as to what is taking place here.
We are tired of you dumping heavy metals all over our county.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not the one to talk to about that.
No, but you are, but you're the one that's doing it. So I've been taking rain samples. I have over 20 samples, and every time you fly, we get high amounts of aluminum, barium, strontium, titanium, magnesium. So I want to know, are you aware of what you're doing? I know you think it's like to increase water supply for Turlock and Modesto, but it's not really happening.
How much have you looked into, you know, the weather manipulation stuff? There's a lot of conspiracies out there on it.
My 20 rain samples will show you that on the days that you're spraying or releasing your flares, we have copious amounts of aluminum, magnesium. There's been some barium, strontium, and titanium flares. Is titanium also in your flares?
Weather manipulation is on everybody's mind right now. You make it rain, so thought this would be a fascinating interview to be able to talk to somebody that knows actually what the hell's going on.
Dude, I run a weather manipulation company. so yeah.
The aftermath of Hurricane Helene still inflicting maximum pain on communities in North Carolina. Many still cut off from power, running water, and communications. The death toll still rising. By an NBC News count, 121 people are now confirmed dead.
Have you heard of Project Storm Fury?
No.
The U.S. Air Force, in collaboration with the U.S. Weather Bureau, which eventually became like NOAA and the National Weather Service, They were flying into the Atlantic Ocean to seed hurricanes to try to mitigate the amount of damage that they did before they broke against the eastern seaboard.
What if this does intensify hurricanes or take the rain away from the Amazon and create a drought? I mean, once it's happened, how many people would pay the price by making the Sahara green, eliminates the rain in the Amazon? Then we got to figure something out immediately because it's going to affect all those people.
The first time that anybody successfully intentionally modified the weather was in 1946 in western New York. They made it snow over the Appalachians. What the idea was in Operation Popeye, which is what we did in Vietnam, was to extend the monsoon season, cause more precipitation over the Ho Chi Minh Trail to impede the logistics of the Viet Cong. When you take your first drink from the cup that is the natural sciences, you find atheism. But down at the bottom of the glass, there's God staring back at you. I wanted to study physics because I wanted to see whether God was real or not.
And then you got introduced to Peter Thiel.
I was invited to a fundraiser for Blake Masters at Peter's house in LA. And that was the first time that I met him. That was before I became a Thiel Fellow.
Technologies, often referred to collectively as geoengineering, that potentially could help reverse the warming effects of global climate change. One that has gained my personal attention is stratospheric aerosol injection, a method of seeding the stratosphere with particles that can help reflect the sun's heat in much the same way that volcanic eruptions do.
Like I said, there's just so many conspiracies about weather manipulation. Was the Hawaii wildfires, was that part of, did that play anything into that? There's the Helene, Hurricane Helene in North Carolina, did that play anything into that? And
Milton in Florida.
yeah. Well, a lot of people are really skeptical of weather modification, me being one of them.
On the geopolitical side, the technology's potential to alter weather patterns and benefit certain regions of the world at the expense of other regions could trigger sharp opposition by some nations.
And so why do they want you to do this? I mean, is it the aquifers or is it farming?
Yeah, the aquifers are running out, the farms. You know, the states actually pay to the tune of tens of millions of dollars a year. And then at the federal level, hundreds of millions. They pay farmers not to farm. They pay them not to farm because they don't want them to use the water.
No kidding.
Right now, if you look at like the border of Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia, Ethiopia just built a dam on the Nile River. Egypt will collapse if they do not have enough water. I think it's Mark Twain who said it. Whiskey's for drinking and water's for fighting over.
So is this like a significant amount of birth control in the water?
Yes.
And there's an infertility problem.
Yes.
How does it affect males, do you know?
It makes you more asexual. Yeah, so it makes you less of a guy and more of a sort of, I don't know, like the way that most guys are now.
The way that most guys are now.
All
I've got
right.
less than 24 hours to finish this binary.
So you see there, it's like very interesting. I mean, you could take a look at that interview on the Sean Ryan show. The context of that conversation, because clearly, like, there was not context to exactly what he meant. Why is he talking so candidly about these things when he's a weather modification quote-unquote expert? He's a 25-year-old. Augustus Dorico is his name. He's the co-founder of this organization. We just saw their website called Rainmaker. And he's addressing the quote-unquote conspiracy theories head on. What a weird dynamic. Very casual, nonchalantly admitting and confessing and agreeing with Sean, not even saying, "Oh yeah, that's all fallacy." Yeah, that was the way that things were done decades ago in terms of like the dichotomy of thoughts and opinions. Claims, counterclaims, all those things. It's now more of a softer war when it comes to the battle of the mind. I mean, pause on everything and just kind of see what this guy Augustus is admitting to. That there's high amounts of estrogen in our water supply due to weather modification. Okay? And you get into it, of course he's not going to shy away in terms of like saying and denying it because the evidence is there. There's no more denying the reality because anyone can get a sample now of snow, water. We all have social media and we have the ability to post while there's still freedom. But social media has this relative amount of freedom where you're able to get hundreds of thousands, millions of people understanding exactly what's going on because of you being a citizen journalist and doing your due diligence. And so the virality aspect we've seen probably never existed as president, idle pen Biden clone. There was a lot of suppression of social media. It was orchestrated. There was a panel of social media founders and CEOs, Zuckerberg, Google CEO, Instagram, Jack Dorsey at the time, and Twitter, which he really was more of the Obama era. But Obama and Biden both had this precedence that they both operated in that same exact realm of becoming buddy-buddy with private entities, with corporations for the sake of manipulation and social engineering. And so under Trump, the only way to combat that was creating Truth Social, because social media companies were being sued. They had congressional hearings, but their algorithms were very much steered against the conservative portion of the population. And it was admitted in Congress. It was lawsuits were won. And so since then, you've had an algorithmic pullback where there's more freedom on most social media platforms. But where is the trench warfare now? Because it's no longer the algorithm for now in this particular season, February, March 2026. But what you do have is you have the battle of impulses. You hear this interview. I mean, of course, it was just a trailer. And are you subconsciously nodding with Augustus Dorico, who's like, yeah, I'm a Peter Thiel fellow. I'm a Thiel fellow. He's proclaiming his proclivity, his association to Peter Thiel. And Peter Thiel, this guy talks about God. I wanted to find God. I mean, if you're associating yourself with Peter Thiel, your God is not the same God of the Bible. Your God is Satan, because Satan is a God of destruction. He comes in many different forms and fragments across cultures and societies and ages. But no matter if you look at Greek gods, Norse gods, Hindu gods, there are the good ones and the bad ones. So if you have a bad attribute, and we're thinking God as in terms of a monotheistic deity, because that's what Peter Thiel believes in. He does believe in a monotheistic deity God, taking biblical scriptures and talking about the end of the world, but then in his context, he has to be one of the purveyors. He has to be the conduits. Who believes in that? Like, we actually must do evil in order for the coming of they don't want to acknowledge Jesus Christ, but the coming of God and his advent, his coming. Muslims believe that they have to cause destruction. Satanists believe that there's a Black Sabbath to them, where there's a day of killing all whoever doesn't align with them. And Christians see this, but they don't. There's not a pilgrimage. There's not a holy war. There's not a jihad in the Christian faith that says we must cause destruction. If anything, of course, if anything, no, it's everything in the Bible talks about make yourself ready because the bridegroom is coming. Jesus is coming, but our preparation is not to instigate and poke and prod and say, hey, look at me. You know, a child that wants attention, but one who is in that place with God to say, I want to be in right standing with you. So it's interesting that across many faiths, you have the exact same story about a return or a shifting, a paradigm shift where God has his way. He's no longer letting just things fly by, but the way to get there, Talmudic Judaism, Babylonian Talmudic Judaism, we already mentioned Islam, and we already mentioned Satanism. They all believe in the same instigative calling card to cause and provoke the wrath of God. What kind of sadistic behavior? So you have the spawn of Peter Thiel. Augustus Dorico seems like a nice guy. Seems like he just wanted to know God. I mean, this is classic wolves in sheep's clothing. In this time and season, you have to use your discernment. You have to read between the lines. Sean Ryan, I really appreciate him. He brings a posture of defense. He is very cut. He's very cut and dry when it comes to the way he interviews. And in this interview, he was throwing some jabs, because even if you're in a conversation with somebody, and yeah, it's all about discussion and, you know, fair opinion, you know, this opinion, that opinion. Yeah, that's the mark of a civilized society. But even if you're going to have this conversation, you do have to, just like everything else, say there is a standard and it's objective. Okay, so if we're seeing the evidence that's pointing to estrogen in water, in the water levels, instances that are very chaotic and destructive. We didn't even mention the hurricane in North Carolina. What about the hurricanes that has spawned in Florida, just out of left field? Category 5 hurricanes that are just one after the other that hit Florida. The floods in Texas, like we mentioned. Okay, again, we know the natural disasters do happen. But again, we've seen these companies, they talk about their technologies to seed clouds, to enhance and beef up any type of weather cell. And then you have the philosophy here. The writing is on the wall. On the higher ups. I'm not blaming Augustus Dorico for having a warpath of read the room. Ignorance is not bliss. Conspiracies in 2026 is just, it's actually hilarious. Conspiracy died. That word died in 2026. So if someone says just tell them, hey, I'm telling you the truth. It died in 2026 because Epstein files, there's been 3 batches. But when they've dropped, it's progressively told, okay, behind closed doors, multiple drops, hundreds and thousands of, they call them drops, like different sets of files, because they organize everything. You could keyword search weather modification. You could keyword search birth control. You could keyword search eugenics. You're going to find all these open conversations with top scientists, with top university professors, images, video clips, interviews with Epstein himself, talking openly and candidly about all of these concepts involving population control. And it's just like, to a certain point, it's not about being more quote unquote mad, where you're always living in a state of heightened anger, but it's about taking that knowledge and actually talking to people about it. Because when someone's awake, it breaks people out of this bubble where they think everything that's told to them is still absolutely the truth. You can watch that interview with Sean Ryan and say, Oh yeah, Augustus is just a nice young man, and Peter Thiel's a nice older gentleman who just wants to keep America safe. Palantir. No, I mean, look into Palantir for 5 minutes and you'll kind of see what's going on. So we're going to take a look at this video, and it's about a congressional meeting in Missouri, a subcommittee, and they're talking about weather modification. And it's like, man, again, read the room, okay? We're on the other side of this narrative. It's already known. It's already been seen. We've already understand what's going on. So don't try to pretend like we're stupid. But they take this at an angle of like minimizing what's going on when it comes to all of this weather modification. Take a look.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Pilkey, just to begin with the basics, can you help us understand the difference between localized efforts that might have and geoforming efforts?
From a policy perspective, weather modification, as you heard from Mr. Martz, seeks to affect rainfall over, say, a drainage, a ski area, a small area. Geoengineering, as it's defined by the IPCC, seeks to counter the effects of global climate change, so at the much larger scale. And usually the effects of climate change, for better or worse, are measured in global average surface temperature. So affecting that metric is the focus of geoengineering.
And Mr. Martz, I think, and I saw in your notes that you referred to it as that cloud seeding, or the impact is, it's hard to get beyond, so, right?
Correct. Yeah. Above. Let me find it here just so I get my terms right.
You had a word.
Levels of mesoscale. So basically, so I said here, so all in all, cloud seeding, it's a peer-reviewed paper, defines as the mesoscale level, particularly there's really absolutely like no effect. That much we. But on much smaller scales than 200 kilometers, there is very much a lot of uncertainty as to the efficacy of cloud. For this is because natural variability is so large.
Yeah, yeah. So I hear you. So I think if folks just, you can definitively say that these are cloud seeding. While it may occur, it's probably not, because its effects are unknown or not certain. It's and then in addition, it only affects a small region. Would you both agree with that?
Yes, for all the effort that's been put into weather modification, if it is having an effects, they're not large enough that we can really see them very clearly.
I would agree to that, yes.
Would you say that in general we kind of have a little bit of an arrogance about our impact on this planet?
Very much so. And I also find that it's a lot with climate change as well. Obviously, again, I'm going to just put a disclaimer here before I am called a climate denier by people. I agree that CO2 is a greenhouse gas, and yes, all else being equal, it does cause warming in the lower atmosphere. However, how that translates to changes in extreme weather is very much more complicated. And I find that there's a very stark parallel between people who claim that, you know, hurricanes are being caused by cloud seeding, and that they're able to control hurricanes, as well as people who think that hurricanes are caused by, you know, a 1 part per 10,000 increase in atmospheric carbon dioxide. And in fact, in my chart here that I shows data that shows that neither hurricane frequency nor intensity, as measured by the Cumulative Cyclone Energy Index, have increased since 1990, and that's data from Colorado State University. Actually, one of the schools that
there is right versus left impulses just in this conversation. When Mr. Martz says, I'm not a climate denier, what did you immediately think about? You probably thought, yeah, so that means he's Republican. Okay? And so that sort of impulse to associate people, categorize people based on these statements, it's just an easy way for the brain to put things into boxes. Like, because that's just how we're made. We're made to be organized, to be people who have a sense of things, meaning we find meaning out of situations, and we don't tend towards wanting the other direction. I just want ambiguity in my life. No, your nervous system is like, I need stability. I need things to make sense to a degree. So you try to find that meaning. Now, how you find that meaning, people will go to lengths to figure out meaning apart from God, apart from Jesus Christ. But what I'm saying is we are made and we're built to have meaning. And so psychologically speaking, you probably had an inference that this guy might be a Republican. What does that do? You have to have a certain opinion on every single matter within that realm of political based affiliation because of the R by your name or the D by your name. Climate change is one thing, and they're over here sort of denying man's impact on climate change. So they're saying we deny climate change, but we're saying that the effects of climate based on man's input is insignificant to be able to measure it. Now, yeah, man can cause pollution, man can dam up rivers and then cause drought. So it's like, what does not change the climate? They're talking about temperature levels, water levels, overall increase of chaotic, systematic things happening, right? A big monsoon because man caused that because of climate change. Yeah, so natural events do take place. They do take place. They're conflating two things here. You got to really pay attention. They're conflating two different issues. One is the intentional weather modification. They're saying, well, man does not cause enough impact on the weather for weather to be modified, just in terms of consumption. But then the other aspect is the weather modification, not just by consumption, but by weather modification technology. And they're saying, well, weather modification technology doesn't impact enough of a radius where it can really systematically cause destruction. Conspiracy theorists. So stop asking us or pointing fingers that climate change or that weather modification is causing changed weather patterns through technology, chemicals, probes, things of that nature. So they're conflating the two. So, like, what's the point of a subcommittee hearing? You know, people are paid, right? Like, everyone's time is paid. You are a sitting congressman for a reason. You are on salary, but beyond your measly salary, because you're inside of your subcommittees or congressional general assemblies, maybe 2 months out of the year at the state level. Those 2 months you're getting paid not something that's livable wage for the whole year. So how are you getting the rest of your money? Yeah, of course, you have to have another job. You have to be a lawyer. You have to be some other type of job and employment. What happens even at the state level? I'm not just talking about U.S. Congress. One, you make more money because people are lobbying for you to speak on their behalf as if you're them. People forget this. When you see a politician speaking, especially in the United States, lobbying is such a big deal here in the United States. Corporations are such a big deal. I'm not saying they're not a big deal in other countries, but U.S. is a very corporate-based system. The corporations and government are just the lines are blurred a lot of times. Not to say it doesn't happen in other countries, but the U.S. specifically is a prime example. So when you see someone speaking, they're speaking on behalf of other congressmen. Didn't just come up with, I have this epiphany. I want to just bring this up before my subcommittee on the minimization of weather modification on whatever impact on weather. I also just come up with these concepts on his own. People can, but this is a very much, you're bringing into board out of his mind, the top left, in as a general audience, and then you have these people acting as the expert witnesses. The narrative is being set up, okay? And so people watch this for public consumption. It might be a couple thousand people, but they know, okay, just as you put a video on social media, if it just reaches 100 people, if that's your reach, at least those 100 people see it. This is a measly state level meeting. Missouri is not a super big state. How many views does it have? 1,000 views. Okay. But I'm just telling you, the narrative is set. Okay. Let's just finish off this video, and then we're going to kind of shift gears, and then we will wrap this up.
And there's also no increase there's an increase in rapid intensification events globally. This is a chart going back to 1990. This was provided to me by Dr. Phil Klotzbach, also from CSU, and it shows that there's no increase since 1990 in the number of rapid intensification events, which is a measure of how fast hurricanes intensify, and it's defined as a 30-knot increase or greater in 24 hours. So there have been increases in heavy rainfall in some regions, and Clapeyron relation, but overall, the idea that we are able to control weather, even through climate change, is largely grossly overstated.
Thank you. I yield back the rest.
Okay, so overstated would say, hey, rein it in. Let's just jump right into this video that's talking about the lab results that took place a couple of months ago. Pretty wild stuff.
Texas. This was in this snowstorm in Texas that just came. She took it to a lab. I've seen reports of people trying to burn the snow and it wouldn't burn. High levels. These are toxic chemical compounds known to harm the brain, the nervous system, and environment. Some of that they say will make you have like a brain fog. I'm here in Texas. I've felt those symptoms of a brain fog. Fake snow that they sent upon us. Everywhere we look is evil.
Essentially graphic that displays all the breakdowns. I'm going to try to find it here. But bottom line, to me, I'm authoritative. They're not Rico COVID-19 reps where they're just talking, Fauci just for speaking out and holding them accountable during a hearing. You have that sort of cue cards. So you're telling me that weather modification isn't driving home a narrative. And you see such a stark contrast with that other clip we just played. It's like, okay, not both things can be true. So which one is it? It's like such a, it's scary, just the ability for people to have such strong opinions in either direction, and it's just the nature of human psychology. We're dealing with a war. You don't even call it spiritual war if you're not spiritual. Call it a psychological war. All right, just think it from a natural perspective. We already talked about the safety. There's safety numbers. There's safety and not going against the grain. And so when you're in a room full of 100 people and they're not talking about it, but you can tell they're very anti, for instance, gun, and you have a gun on you. Are you going to be like, hey guys, check out my Smith & Wesson? No, you're going to keep that silent because you just know they're not going to be okay with the fact that I have a different opinion than them. They might start talking, like, man, if someone with a gun walked in here, we would wring his neck or whatever. Like, it's just a crazy example. Not good on the fly with these things. You wouldn't say, well, you know what? It's my time to admit I've got a gun on me. You would be taken down, arrested, all that stuff. You'd say, yeah. You'd probably lie in the moment. Yeah, that I'd show them too. I would, whatever. And it's called self-preservation. You would try to preserve your image, your safety, because you're thinking of the justification. Your health and safety is more important than having an opinion. We do that all the time. There's a safety mechanism that we all have to recognize. The Holy Spirit, God, Jesus Christ, is calling you to uncomfortable places, to new waters, because of that uncomfortability, it's going to cause you to do something against your will. But see, if you want to follow Jesus Christ and you want to do something that fulfills this God-shaped size hole in your heart, meaning no matter what you do, no matter how you use your time, nothing really fully satisfies. Jesus Christ can only fill that. He's going to require something of you, and it's going to be uncomfortable. So the same pattern, it goes with public opinion, and we just have to really cross over that threshold as a society. I'm going to go ahead and show you this clip on the Guadalupe River. This is July 2025.
July 4th in Kerr County was eventful, and for all the wrong reasons.
Oh my God! There's people screaming in the river!
This came at night.
They woke up underwater. When
people were asleep in bed.
And overrun by raging floodwaters from the Guadalupe River.
It was just a
roar that couldn't drown out.
And then sound.
What haunts many of them now.
And you can hear them screaming.
I saw children floating in the water begging for help that we could not reach.
The river has flooded before, but never like this.
There were no minutes. It was seconds.
Never 26 feet in 45 minutes.
There's so much water between me and where I had to go.
Every good and fun down by the river story has been replaced with the horrors they've witnessed.
We saw all of the other camps destroyed, obliterated.
The doors opened and the flood came in from both sides.
We heard so many survival stories in Central Texas.
Go tighter!
In San Angelo, rescuers braved the rushing river, forming a human chain to save a woman. In Centerpoint, another woman was pulled from a tree she had climbed to escape the rising floodwaters.
Grab whatever and get out, get out.
And there was furniture everywhere. The water was up to here.
People clinging to trees, to mattresses, to pillars, to hope.
We just held on for a couple more hours.
Yeah, a couple hours. We waited and waited and waited.
But for far too many people, young and old, the river was faster than the help.
He started yelling at them, "Throw me your baby, throw me your baby."
The floodwaters didn't just take their towns, it took their world.
Both my parents are deceased, and I said, Mom, Dad, God, help.
More than 130 people are now confirmed dead, including dozens of children who were attending summer camp along the river.
I can't even imagine what those girls are going through.
There is a grim comfort in knowing many are still missing. Even more families are left painfully wondering.
There are going to be some of us that are going to walk away empty-handed. We're going to have to bring our child home.
Over the next several days, the death toll rose as the water receded, and it has revealed the worst.
It's like mass destruction. It's like a third world war zone.
The efforts to find survivors continues in the air, on land, and on the river.
They're running into a lot of technical challenges with terrain, with water.
Almost 2 weeks later, at some point, search and rescue becomes recovery.
I can't say I'm okay, but I'm going to do my job.
It was supposed to be a day to celebrate, but Kerr County spent it fighting to survive.
Please pray for our community.
July 4th now means something more.
This is a hard day.
On the Guadalupe River, I'm Jobin Punker.
It's just so sad. It's so hard to watch. I mean, because it's in the backyard when it comes to, my personal context. It's literally just a few hours away from where I'm located. And so it's just, one of those things where you see that, you hear the stories, you see the time lapses. There's a particular time lapse where it's in 30 minutes. People had 30-minute warning. A flash flood. I'm not talking about on the river itself, because the way that it happened, of course, the river filled, it spilled over, and but there was a flash flood that just completely obliterated everything. And so, man, I'm telling you, this is not new. You literally heard in that episode with Sean Ryan. and that Augustus guy who's talking about, yeah, like this happened in Vietnam. I mean, he's openly admitting it. Okay, so based on the Epstein file drop, based on alone, you should see there's a malevolent, intentional design where they want to systematically destroy this population. Because I'm speaking all to the skeptical ones that still don't believe that anything could be systematically conspiratorially, coordinated between people who want to objectively kill you. You should just look up the term eugenics. What is eugenics? It has to do with population control. Systematically has to do with philosophy that says the world is overpopulated. This is nothing new. This philosophy is not a 2026 concept. This is something that's been around for modern post-human thought process. Okay, 1900s. Margaret Sanger believed black children, the black population ought to be systematically murdered through abortion. There is no difference between then and now. The whole world's population could fit in the state of Texas and have 1 square mile of land. That's an objective fact. Okay? So you're dealing with people whose intention is to kill people on a global scale. I'm telling you, that is the truth of it. You already saw Peter Thiel, his involvement, his whole philosophy. It's a post-human reality. It's humanoid surveillance. It's Georgia Guidestone, which talks about the dwindling down of the global population to about 100 million so that they can construct a new world in which everyone is controlled from a more centralized one world government. How are you going to kill 8.9 billion people? If we have 8 billion, 9 billion, how are you going to kill all those people? Everything under the sun that you can think of. Weather modification is just one of them. So there's some scriptures that talk about this very thing, and I just wanted to land on this, and then that's it. That's it for the night. But I just want to take a look here. I'm gonna open up this. It says here in Luke chapter 21, verse 11, it says, "There will be great earthquakes and in various places famines and pestilences, and there will be terrors and great signs from heaven." The Bible is talking directly about that. Not then, of course, natural disasters have always happened, but a marker is of the times we're in is a compression of events, meaning you're not just, oh man, if you've heard of this, there was the great, if you have heard your grandparents talk about stuff, that was the great, War of 1812. That was the great snowstorm of 1945. Like, things happen in such spaced out increments, but they should have shown statistics about the compression of extreme weather, of the number of hurricanes that are happening now in short compressed time frames versus, because we've been monitoring weather patterns for decades. Okay, it's not a brand new concept, but even the last 10 years. So of course we have the one narrative, climate change, and then two, we have man-made weather modification. We already proved man-made weather modification is true. It is happening. Okay, there are multiple entities. Governments are spending billions of dollars. So, here you have it, though. Scripture is indicating this reality, this truth. Great earthquakes, various places, famines and pestilences. Man-made diseases, anybody? COVID-19 is just the tip of the spear. There will be terrors and great signs from heaven. Terrors, something that terrifies. Sounds like the false alien invasion to me, or the return of the Nephilim. Great signs from heaven. Blood red moons, plasmoids in the sky. I mean, there's just like a bunch of sky things happening. The sun flickering, the moon flickering, like people seeing 2 moons, 2 suns. What? it's all about the preparation and normalization of just crazy things. And I do believe a lot of this is orchestrated by our governments. I mean, China, they talked about having a fake sun that's as powerful as the sun itself. What do you mean? A ball of gas that's been, working nonstop for millennia? What do you mean you got a sun? So you have these things that are stated openly. You want to believe them or not? Like, what's the deal? Pick your mindset. Matthew 24:7 says, "For nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in various places." Joel 2:30-31 says, "I will show wonders in the heavens and on the earth, blood and fire and billows of smoke. The sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord." So Joel is talking about not the first coming, because in the first coming of Christ, yes, there was weather patterns. There was an earthquake that took place at the time of Jesus' crucifixion. There was alignment of the moon and the stars, and that marked the coming of Jesus Christ and his birth. There was constellations and weather patterns that converged that marked his time of his first coming. But it speaks about the sun will be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord. The great and dreadful day of the Lord was not referred to as the first coming of Jesus. It's always been referred to as the future second coming. It says great and dreadful. Great, dreadful. That's a dichotomy, if anything. It's not about right versus left. It's about great and dreadful. Great and terrible, some translations say. So why is that? How could it be great for some and terrible for others? Right? If it's destruction, physical destruction, because all those things are primed and in trying to get us in a place of emotional instability. There's a real God out there who loves you, and he wants to be your protector. He wants to be your shield. That's what it says in Psalms, that he is my shield and who I can run to in my time of need. David talks about this in Psalms, that under your shadow I will abide. I will hide under your mighty wing. Is it about the physical wings of Jesus? Is it about Jesus is super tall, so he has a shadow? There's a mind, there's a presence of God that he's inviting us to experience and to dwell in and to meditate on. And his mind is strategy, but it's also peace. There is a protection, there's a safety, there's a revelation that is in the presence of Jesus. And so in the midst of all of this, there's an invitation to say, I don't want to be part of the terrible day. I want to be part of the great day, because these signs and these wonders are not going to stop. I just want to end here. Matthew 24, 6-13 says, "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars, but see it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the day is still to come. Nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of birth pains. Then you will be handed over to be persecuted and put to death, and you will be hated by all nations because of me. At that time, many will turn away from the faith and betray and hate each other, and many false prophets will appear and deceive many people. Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold, but the one who stands firm in the end will be saved." All right, so that word for war, G4171, is polemos. You will hear of wars. Now, war, because remember, okay, New Testament is written in Greek, Old Testament is written in Hebrew, but the authors were Hebrew, meaning they were of a type of speech pattern and writing sort of stylization, for lack of a better word, where intention was written in context. And so for us, we have a very literal mindset. If I showed you a pen, or here's a bullet, right? How would you describe it? You'd say it's sharp, it's heavy, there's a brown tip. In Hebrew thought, okay, I could be speaking English, but I could still comment on another type of way of seeing things. This bullet would mean death. Hey, describe to me that bullet. Oh, you mean that death canister? Right? That's the difference between like someone who comes from especially what we consider ancient, because a few thousand years ago, mindset when it comes to writing. So again, we know the New Testament to be written in Greek, okay, but Hebrew authors, people with Hebrew mindsets, all right? Greek was the common language at the time, just as English is now. But if I'm thinking like them, then I'm thinking in a certain way. So wars, you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. Yeah, Rome had occupied, let me just pull up this, wars and rumors of wars right here. Yeah, Rome occupied Jerusalem at that time, and so they were under occupation. People wanted Jesus to come to save them, to kick Rome off their backs. But Jesus didn't come to do that. He came to impart his spirit. He came to say, hey, doesn't matter what's happening in your physical life. Pick up your cross, your mindset, the things that you carry, your experiences, your disappointments, and follow me. Allow me to show you what is beyond this physical space, this physical realm. So wars, it speaks of a conflict. All right. In the Hebrew, it actually speaks of the word bread and meat. So it says you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. How's war related to bread? How's it related to meat? All right. That doesn't make sense naturally. But if you start to understand that bread, according to Hebrew thought, and meat, according to Hebrew thought, has to do with the word of God, then war in itself, which also means conflict in Hebrew, but it has to do with a war of the mind. It has to do with the war of an understanding. Rumors of wars. Man, I don't know if this is true about God. That's a rumor of a war. Oh, shoot, did you hear this about the alien invasion? Seems like aliens are actually the master race. Man, until that alien comes down and proclaims that they are actually the master seeding race, you have this battle for the mind. And there will come a day when, here very soon, where people will appear. These types of beings will appear. That we've been primed through our media that this type of event would come. But what are you going to stand on? Are you going to stand on the Word of God? Are you cementing yourself in a real relationship with Jesus Christ, where you know that He did physically come 2,000 years ago, and He did physically resurrect, and that means something for you today? If you want to start to believe that, then ask Jesus Christ to enter your heart and to reveal Himself to you. Because scriptures like Matthew 24, you'll start to say, oh, okay, well, there's a war always taking place. There's rumors of wars taking place all the time. How can I get myself ready? The battle on a physical plane when it comes to weather modification is not only for the physical people, they want to cause this destruction, it's also the matter of opinion. Because along the way, if you can rationalize, it's okay to be seeded with aluminum and barium and all these chemicals. We didn't even get into the chemical breakdown of chemtrails and all those videos. We could have spent 10 hours on this subject. But the fact is, you have to come to objective conclusions about subjects, not to entrench yourself, but to then know how to pray. Because if this is a problem, then you will understand that you have a responsibility to pray. Because it says here that you will hear wars and rumors of wars, and see to it that you are not alarmed. Meaning, just because things are happening all around us, whether it be a physical war or at a deeper level, rumors about the reality of Jesus Christ, things happening in all dimensions. I'm talking, any aspect you can think about where there is controversy, where there's questions, where there's doubt, where there's two sides to the coin. It says, make sure that you're not alarmed, because such things must happen, but the end is still not come. So God is saying there's a time where He's going to come. Like He's saying, He's promising this is going to happen. So don't pretend like it's going to happen in the next generation. You have to live every single day like Jesus is coming tomorrow. Okay? So how does that live? You got to live a life where you are investigating the Word of God and you're asking the Lord to reveal the Word to you. It says make sure that you're not alarmed. These things must happen. Meaning there must be conflict. There must be these rumors. Why? So that we will fight the battle the right way. Okay? When you have an opinion on something, that doesn't necessarily mean you're fighting the battle. Well, I am for Jesus. Okay, that's great. That's wonderful. That's one facet of it. What do you do with that knowledge? Every single episode tend to get into this area where it's about prayer and intercession. Like that has to be a facet of your walk with Jesus Christ. Prayer and intercession is really a tool of spiritual warfare that doesn't just affect you; it affects people around you. It doesn't mean you pray around them all the time, but it means that there's something that you carry that's about changing atmospheres. Talk about weather modification. If you pray around your neighborhood, if you pray for other people as they come into your mind, if you call people when God drops it on you, if you have the intention of communicating with God through prayer, then you'll start to recognize you're changing the spiritual weather around you. If anything, that's the place to take such a dreary subject and turn it into something good. We could have gone into supplements tonight, some of which, I'm trying to do. I'm trying to cleanse my colon, trying to cleanse my liver. I'm trying to maintain a healthy lifestyle and optimize my health to prolong living as long as God will give me breath in my body. And so there's a fight for those physiological things. But really appreciate you tuning in tonight. Stay informed, stay ready, fight like heaven.